What if the person you like is secretly in love with you, but they're too afraid to say it? Carl Jung, the legendary psychologist, discovered that the deepest truths about love aren't spoken, they're revealed at night, when the subconscious mind takes control. If you notice him doing this while he's asleep or half awake, it's one of Jung's biggest signs that he's emotionally attached to you, even if he won't admit it. Pay close attention to his dreams, the way he moves in his sleep, even the words he mumbles when he's not fully conscious, because those hidden moments, they never lie. Carl Jung spent his life studying the unconscious mind, the part of us that holds desires we don't even realize we have. And one of his most fascinating discoveries was how love manifests when we're least guarded. During the day, people can hide their feelings, play games, or even convince themselves they're not interested. But at night, the mask comes off. The subconscious doesn't know how to pretend. So if you've ever sensed that someone has feelings for you, but they're holding back, today's video will help you spot the undeniable signs, straight from Jung's research. These aren't just random behaviors. There's psychological proof that his mind, and maybe even his heart, are secretly tied to you. Let's start with the most obvious one. What happens when he closes his eyes and dreams? 1. The power of dreams. Carl Jung, the pioneering psychologist who delved deep into the mysteries of the human psyche, saw dreams as more than just random firings of the brain during sleep. He believed they were direct messages from the unconscious, a realm where our truest thoughts, fears, and desires reside, untouched by the filters of our waking mind. According to Jung, dreams serve as a bridge between what we consciously acknowledge and what we suppress, offering glimpses into emotions we might not even realize we harbor. When it comes to love, this becomes especially telling. If someone is dreaming about you often, it's not mere coincidence. Their subconscious is actively holding on to you, replaying your presence in a space where logic and pretense don't exist. Dreams about a specific person, particularly recurring ones, carry significant weight in Jungian psychology. A recurring dream is like a persistent knock on the door of the conscious mind, a sign that something or someone is occupying mental and emotional space that hasn't been resolved. If he's dreaming about you repeatedly, it suggests that his mind is wrestling with feelings he hasn't fully processed or expressed. These dreams could range from vivid, emotionally charged scenarios to fleeting, seemingly mundane moments where you simply appear. But the key detail isn't the content of the dream itself, it's the frequency. The unconscious doesn't waste energy on what doesn't matter. So if you're showing up night after night, it's because, on some level, you matter deeply. Jung also emphasized that dreams often communicate through symbols rather than literal representations. So even if the dreams aren't overtly romantic, their underlying tone can reveal hidden attachment. For example, dreaming about searching for you, protecting you, or even feeling a strong emotional pull in your presence all point to unresolved longing. The emotions experienced in the dream, whether joy, anxiety, or sadness, are clues to how he truly feels when his guard is down. A man who is secretly in love may not confess it in daylight, but in his dreams, where societal expectations and ego dissolve, his subconscious doesn't lie. Moreover, Jung's concept of the anima, the unconscious feminine aspect within a man's psyche, further explains why certain people dominate dreams. If you embody qualities that resonate with his anima, such as warmth, creativity, or emotional depth, his dreams may amplify your presence as a symbol of inner yearning. This isn't just about attraction. It's about a soul-level connection his unconscious recognizes before his conscious mind catches up. So if you've ever wondered whether his feelings run deeper than he lets on, pay attention to the whispers of his dreams. They're the unfiltered truth his waking self might not be ready to share. Recurring dreams about someone are rarely meaningless. They're the psyche's way of working through unresolved emotions, and in the context of love, They often signify a fixation that goes beyond casual interest. If he remembers these dreams, or if they leave him with lingering emotions upon waking, that's another red flag. His conscious mind is now engaging with what his unconscious has been trying to tell him. And that's when secret love starts to surface, whether he intends it to or not. 2. Sleep-talking or mumbling your name. The phenomenon of sleep-talking offers a rare and unfiltered window into the deepest layers of the human psyche. When we sleep, the conscious mind, with all its inhibitions, social conditioning, and carefully constructed defenses, temporarily relinquishes control. What emerges in this vulnerable state are raw, uncensored fragments of our inner world. Carl Jung understood that the unconscious doesn't operate by the same rules as waking life. It communicates through symbols, emotions, and sometimes even direct utterances that the conscious self would never dare to voice aloud. This is why hearing your name whispered or mentioned in someone's sleep isn't just a curious midnight occurrence. It's a profound psychological clue. The walls we build during the day crumble at night, and what slips through is often the truth we've been avoiding. When a man unconsciously speaks your name in his sleep, it's a sign that you occupy a significant space in his mental and emotional landscape. Sleep-talking typically arises during transitions between sleep stages, particularly during moments when the brain is replaying or processing the day's unresolved thoughts. If you've been on his mind, whether through conscious reflection or subconscious preoccupation, the likelihood of your name surfacing in his speech increases dramatically. Unlike daytime conversations, where words can be measured and manipulated to maintain appearances, sleep-talking bypasses all pretense. There's no opportunity to overthink, to soften, or to hide. The unconscious simply reveals what it has been silently carrying. Jungian psychology suggests that the things we suppress or avoid in waking life often find expression in these uncontrolled moments. A man who hesitates to confess his feelings outright, whether out of fear, uncertainty, or pride, might instead reveal them when his defenses are dissolved by sleep. The mention of your name could be embedded in a mumbled sentence, a half-formed story, or even an emotional outburst, none of which he may remember upon waking. But the very fact that you appear in this unguarded state speaks volumes. It indicates an attachment that runs deeper than surface-level attraction, one that has taken root in the parts of his mind he doesn't govern. Beyond names, listen for the emotional tone of his sleep speech. Does his voice soften when he mentions you? Is there a note of longing, frustration, or warmth? Emotion is the language of the unconscious, and the way something is said in sleep often carries more weight than the words themselves. A man who is secretly in love may not just say your name. He might sigh it, laugh with it, or even sound wistful, as if his sleeping self is reaching for something just out of grasp. These subtle vocal cues are the unconscious mind's way of betraying what the conscious mind refuses to acknowledge. Of course, context matters. If you've recently spent significant time together or shared an intense experience, his sleep-talking could simply reflect recent mental activity. But if these utterances occur repeatedly, without obvious triggers, it suggests something more enduring. The unconscious doesn't waste energy on fleeting thoughts. Persistent mentions of you, especially if they evoke emotional responses, point to a fixation that goes beyond casual interaction. In Jung's framework, this could even hint at an archetypal connection, where you represent something essential to his inner world, whether as a muse, a mirror, or a missing piece. Ultimately, sleep-talking is one of the purest forms of psychological honesty. There's no audience to perform for, no image to uphold, just the mind expressing what it can't or won't during daylight hours. If you've ever been the subject of someone's midnight murmurs, consider it a rare glimpse behind the curtain of their carefully maintained persona. The unconscious speaks in riddles, but when it comes to love, even fragments of truth can be deafening. 3. Restlessness when you're on his mind. There's a particular kind of insomnia that has nothing to do with caffeine or discomfort, but everything to do with the heart. Jung called this phenomenon emotional tension, a state where unexpressed feelings create such psychic energy that they disrupt the body's natural rhythms. When a man lies awake at night, his mind circling around thoughts of you, it's more than simple restlessness. It's the physical manifestation of an inner conflict between what he feels and what he allows himself to express. The bed becomes a battleground where his conscious resistance fights against his unconscious yearning, and the tossing and turning are the visible signs of this silent struggle. This nocturnal unrest follows a distinct pattern. You might notice he becomes more active digitally during these sleepless hours, sending late-night messages that feel unusually vulnerable, liking old social media posts, or even just staring at your chat window without typing. These are the modern equivalents of pacing the floorboards, each action an attempt to release the emotional pressure building inside him. Jung would recognize this behavior immediately. It's the ego's last-ditch effort to maintain control before the unconscious takes over in dreams. The later the hour, the thinner the veil between his carefully constructed daytime persona and the raw truth of his feelings. The quality of his restlessness reveals the depth of his attachment. Casual interest doesn't keep people awake at night. But when someone occupies that liminal space between sleep and wakefulness, when thoughts of you disrupt his body's need for rest, you're dealing with something far more significant than passing fancy. There's a biological component to this as well. The same neurotransmitters associated with romantic love, dopamine, norepinephrine, and serotonin, also regulate sleep cycles. When these chemicals flood the system with unacknowledged longing, sleep becomes impossible. His body is quite literally lovesick, even if his words haven't yet confessed it. Jungian analysis would pay special attention to the timing of this restlessness. Does it follow moments of meaningful interaction between you? Does it intensify after periods of separation? These patterns matter because they show whether you've become an emotional anchor point in his psyche, someone whose absence creates tangible discomfort. The man who checks his phone at 2 a.m. to see if you've texted isn't just bored. He's unconsciously seeking emotional regulation through connection with you. His sleeplessness isn't random insomnia, but a symptom of what Jung called psychic energy, the force that drives all human behavior at its core. Perhaps most telling is what happens when sleep finally comes. Even in unconsciousness, this tension often persists. You might notice him mentioning vivid dreams or talking in his sleep more during these periods. His body may be still, but his mind continues working through what his waking self hasn't resolved. This is why restlessness about someone often precedes other unconscious behaviors like dreaming or sleep talking. They're all part of the same psychological process of integration, where the psyche attempts to reconcile conscious behavior with unconscious truth. Ultimately, this kind of sleeplessness serves an important psychological function. It's the mind's way of insisting that these feelings demand attention, that they can't be indefinitely suppressed. Each restless night is another step toward consciousness, another nudge toward acknowledgement. While he may tell himself he's just having trouble sleeping, the truth his body already knows is far more revealing. True emotional connection doesn't follow business hours. It lingers in the quiet darkness when defenses are down, insisting on being felt. And when someone can't sleep because you're on their mind, that's not insomnia. That's the heart trying to speak in the only language it knows when all others fail. For protective or intuitive behaviors. Carl Jung's concept of the anima, the feminine aspect within a man's psyche, reveals why certain protective instincts emerge when genuine emotional connection exists. When a man begins exhibiting protective behaviors toward you, especially those that seem to arise spontaneously or unconsciously, it often signals that you've become intertwined with his deeper psychological structures. These aren't calculated gestures of false chivalry, but instinctive responses that bypass rational thought entirely. The man who wakes with a sudden worry about your safety, who intuitively senses when you're distressed even without obvious cues, or who positions himself physically to shield you from perceived threats, these behaviors originate from a place far beneath surface-level attraction. They suggest his anima has identified you as someone significant to his emotional ecosystem. This protective impulse often manifests most clearly during vulnerable moments, late at night, in times of crisis, or when social masks typically fall away. You might notice him calling or texting unexpectedly to check on you after having a bad feeling, or insisting on walking you home when there's no objective danger. These actions frequently surprise even the man himself, as they emerge from the unconscious rather than deliberate intention. Jung would interpret this as the anima's influence, the part of his psyche that connects to intuition, emotion, and relational bonding overriding his usual conscious control. The stronger the emotional investment, the more pronounced these automatic protective behaviors become, as his unconscious works to preserve what it has come to value. The timing of these protective instincts offers important clues about their origin. When they occur during sleep or in that hazy space between dreaming and wakefulness, their authenticity becomes even more apparent. A man who startles awake with concern for your well-being, or who dreams about rescuing you from harm, is revealing emotional priorities his waking self might hesitate to acknowledge. These nighttime manifestations carry particular weight because they occur when the conscious mind's defenses are down, allowing the unconscious to communicate its true concerns without censorship. The specific imagery in such dreams matters less than the emotional urgency behind them. His psyche is rehearsing scenarios where your safety and comfort become his responsibility. Jungian theory also helps explain why these protective behaviors often feel reciprocal in nature. As his anima responds to your presence, you may find yourself occupying what Jung called the anima role in his psyche, the embodiment of qualities that activate his deepest capacities for care and connection. This creates a feedback loop where his unconscious protective impulses strengthen in response to your authentic self, not because you need protection in any literal sense, but because your essence has become psychologically significant to him. The man who intuitively senses when you've had a difficult day, who remembers your fears without being reminded, or who adjusts his behavior to accommodate your unspoken needs is demonstrating that you've taken up residence in parts of his mind he doesn't fully control. Perhaps most telling is how these protective instincts persist even when they serve no practical purpose. The man who insists on waiting up until you get home safely, even when you're perfectly capable, or who feels compelled to warn you about imagined dangers isn't acting out of rational assessment, but from emotional necessity. These unnecessary protections reveal the depth of his attachment, as the unconscious mind often expresses love through exaggerated concern. While modern sensibilities might dismiss such behavior as overprotective, from a Jungian perspective, it represents the psyche's symbolic way of saying you matter, sometimes more honestly than romantic words ever could. Ultimately, these protective behaviors form a silent language of emotional investment, one that bypasses the ego's defenses and speaks directly from the unconscious. They're particularly significant because they require no audience or reward. They emerge because they must, driven by internal psychological imperatives rather than external expectations. When you notice these instinctive acts of care occurring repeatedly, especially in unguarded moments, you're witnessing something far more revealing than calculated romance. You're seeing proof that on the deepest level, where the anima resides and true connections form, he's already claimed you as someone worth protecting. 5. Synchronicities and coincidences. Carl Jung introduced the concept of synchronicity to describe those inexplicable moments when inner psychological states and outer events align in ways that defy logical explanation. When it comes to matters of the heart, These synchronistic occurrences often serve as the universe's subtle way of highlighting a connection that exists beyond conscious awareness. If you keep appearing in his thoughts, particularly during the quiet, reflective hours of night, or if seemingly random coincidences keep bringing you into his orbit, Jung would argue this is more than mere chance. These are meaningful coincidences, the psyche's way of signaling that something significant is at work beneath the surface of everyday reality. The nighttime hours seem to amplify these synchronistic experiences because that's when the rational mind loosens its grip, allowing the unconscious to perceive connections the waking self might dismiss. He might dream about you only to wake up and find an unexpected message from you waiting on his phone. Or he might be thinking about a song that reminds him of you, only to hear it playing in a cafe the next morning. These aren't just pleasant surprises, they're psychological breadcrumbs leading him toward a truth he hasn't yet consciously acknowledged. Jung believed such synchronicities increase in frequency when we're on the verge of important psychological realizations, as if the universe conspires to push us toward growth and connection. What makes these nighttime synchronicities particularly telling is their emotional resonance. A coincidence only becomes synchronistic when it carries an undeniable emotional charge, when it feels significant rather than random. If he finds himself repeatedly waking at the exact time associated with your birthday, or if your name keeps appearing in books he reads before bed, these patterns suggest his unconscious is actively seeking connection with you. The psyche has an uncanny ability to attract and notice exactly what it needs for its development, and when you become the recurring element in these meaningful coincidences, it indicates you've taken on archetypal importance in his inner world. Jung would also pay attention to the timing of these synchronicities. Do they cluster around moments of emotional significance? Perhaps after your first intimate conversation, or during a period when he's been questioning his feelings. The unconscious often uses synchronicity as a corrective, a way to balance one-sided conscious attitudes. If he's been telling himself he shouldn't have feelings for you, but then keeps encountering reminders of you in unlikely places, this could be his psyche's way of challenging that resistance. The more he tries to ignore his feelings, the more persistently synchronistic events may arise to confront him with what he's attempting to suppress. These meaningful coincidences often follow a pattern of increasing intensity. What begins as occasionally thinking of you when a certain song plays might evolve into experiencing veritable showers of synchronicities, running into your friends unexpectedly, discovering unexpected connections between your lives, or having premonitory dreams about events involving you. This escalation isn't accidental. It reflects the growing importance of the connection in his psychological landscape. Jung saw such intensifying patterns as evidence of the transcendent function at work, the psyche's capacity to move toward wholeness by integrating unconscious contents into conscious awareness. Ultimately, synchronistic events serve as bridges between inner and outer worlds. When you become the recurring element in his meaningful coincidences, especially those occurring in the liminal space between sleep and wakefulness, it suggests you've become more than just another person in his life. You've taken on symbolic significance, representing something essential to his psychological growth. While the rational mind may dismiss these occurrences as mere chance, the unconscious recognizes them for what they truly are, the quiet but insistent voice of fate, whispering that some connections transcend ordinary explanation. In Jung's framework, when synchronicities persistently bring someone to mind, particularly during vulnerable nighttime hours, it's not just coincidence, it's the soul's way of saying, "Pay attention." The unconscious mind speaks in whispers, through dreams that linger upon waking, through midnight murmurs of your name, through restless nights when thoughts of you override the need for sleep. These aren't random occurrences, but a pattern, a constellation of signs illuminating what lingers beneath the surface. Carl Jung's work reveals that when someone is secretly in love, Their subconscious betrays them in ways they can't control. The vivid dreams where you take center stage, the sleep-talking confessions he'd never make aloud, the protective instincts that arise unbidden, these are the psyche's way of bridging the gap between what's felt and what's left unspoken. Even the seemingly coincidental moments, the songs, the timing, the unexpected encounters, carry weight when they keep leading back to you. The unconscious doesn't waste energy on what's unimportant. If you're woven into his nights, you've already taken root in his mind. So if you've noticed these signs, trust what they reveal. His subconscious is shouting what his waking self might still be too hesitant to say. Love, in its earliest stages, often lives in these liminal spaces, the quiet before dawn, the space between thoughts, the unguarded moments when the heart hijacks the mind. Pay attention to the patterns. They're rarely wrong. Now we'd love to hear from you. Have you experienced these signs with someone? Did dreams or synchronicities later prove to be meaningful? Share your stories in the comments. We read every one. And if you found this dive into psychology and love intriguing, don't forget to like and subscribe. We explore the hidden forces that shape attraction, connection, and the mysteries of the human heart. Turn on notifications so you never miss what the unconscious is trying to tell us. Until next time, keep listening to the whispers. They always know the truth first.